Walter Jenkins reached for his old leather wallet like he did every morning without thinking. It had sat in the same spot on his nightstand for more than 4 decades. His fingers brushed over its worn edges as he picked it up and opened it slowly, ready to count out the few 20s he kept for coffee, groceries, and his regular Sunday breakfast at Murphy's Diner. But this morning, something felt wrong. He counted the bills again. 20, 40, 60. His hand trembled a little as he kept going. 300, 500. He paused. His brows furrowed. 900? That couldn't be right. He closed the wallet, then opened it again. Counted slower. Then again. Still the same. Walter sat down on the edge of his bed, eyes fixed on the old wallet that had once belonged to his father. He wasn't the kind of man to misplace money. At 70, he might be older and a bit slower, but he wasn't forgetful. Not yet. For the past 3 years, ever since his wife passed, he had tracked every dollar with quiet precision. It gave his days structure, control. And now, $1,000 was gone. He stood up and searched methodically. Dresser drawers, coat pockets, under the bed. Nothing. He even checked the freezer, where he'd once tucked away Christmas tips years ago. Still nothing. A slow, heavy feeling settled in his chest. Downstairs, the scent of bacon drifted through the floorboards. He heard Emily humming in the kitchen, the same cheerful tune she used to sing as a teenager when she got ready for school. That warmth should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a cruel contrast to the unease growing in his stomach. He made his way down the steps slowly, gripping the railing a bit tighter than usual. The kitchen was bright with morning light, and Emily stood at the stove in her blue apron, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. "Morning, Dad," she greeted without turning. "Coffee's ready." Walter nodded but didn't sit. "Emily, have you seen any money around? I seem to be missing $1,000. She turned around, concern written across her face. 1,000? No, I haven't seen anything. Are you sure you didn't spend it on something? Maybe a donation? Or one of those hardware orders you make sometimes?" The words stung more than they should have. Her voice wasn't dismissive, just careful. Too careful. "I would remember spending that much," he said quietly. Before she could answer, another voice cut in from the hallway. Derek, still in yesterday's work clothes, leaned against the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Money problems again?" he asked. Walter looked up. "Derek, you haven't been in my room, have you?" Derek's posture shifted instantly. He crossed his arms, jaw tightening. "What are you trying to say, Mr. Jenkins? That I'm a thief?" Walter kept his tone even. "I'm asking if you've seen anything. That's all. I work 16-hour days to keep this roof over our heads," Derek said sharply. "You think I need to steal from my own family?" Emily moved quickly between them. "Dad, Derek wouldn't do that. There must be another explanation." But Walter wasn't listening to her voice anymore. He was watching Derek's eyes, how they never quite met his, how his anger seemed too quick, too polished. Something cold settled in his gut. "Of course," Walter said finally. "I'm sure it will turn up." Derek grabbed his lunch bag, checked his reflection in the hallway mirror a little too carefully, then headed out the door. The slam that followed was louder than necessary. Emily laid a gentle hand on Walter's arm. "Dad, you've been under a lot of stress since Mom passed. Maybe it's grief. Sometimes our minds play tricks." Walter nodded, but his thoughts were already far away. Through the kitchen window, he watched Derek's truck drive off down Maple Street, the taillights disappearing behind trimmed hedges and quiet lawns. He wasn't imagining things. Something was wrong. That evening, they all gathered in the living room like any other day. Emily folded laundry, stacking Derek's work shirts into neat piles. Walter sat in his recliner, newspaper open but unread. His eyes kept drifting to Derek, who paced the room like a man with too much energy and nowhere to put it. He checked his phone, adjusted the blinds, ran a hand through his hair. Then, all at once, he turned to Emily, smile stretched wide. "Hey, babe, I've got a surprise for you. Close your eyes." She laughed, delighted. Derek, what is it? Just trust me. Close your eyes and hold out your hand. Walter peeked over the top of his paper, just enough to see Derek pull a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Not the kind of box that came from bargain outlets. This one was upscale, downtown upscale. Emily opened it and gasped. Inside lay a delicate gold chain that sparkled in the lamplight. Derek, she breathed, this is beautiful. Where did you get the money for this? I picked up extra shifts, Derek said proudly. Worked all weekend, double overtime. You didn't tell me you were working weekends. I wanted it to be a surprise. When you love someone, you make things happen. Walter folded his paper. They pay well these days, huh? Derek's smile tightened just slightly. Yeah, time and a half on Saturdays, double time on Sundays. Which warehouse? Walter asked, keeping his voice casual. New contract with Ford, the one off 8 Mile. Derek moved behind Emily to clasp the chain around her neck. She glowed with happiness. Walter didn't say more, but he watched how Derek's hand slipped the receipt into his pocket. Watched the flash of a store logo. Silverman's Fine Jewelry, Woodward Avenue. Real gold. At least $800 worth. $1,000 missing. $800 spent. The numbers weren't adding up. But Walter was. Walter Jenkins didn't sleep that night. Not because he was afraid. Because he was sure. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from earlier that day. The missing money, Derek's too-polished reaction, the sudden surprise gift. Walter was a man who believed in patterns. 43 years as an engineer had trained him to spot flaws in systems, to fix things that didn't work the way they were supposed to. What he saw now in his home wasn't grief or coincidence. It was design. And so, the next morning, Walter dressed early and skipped his usual stop at Murphy's Diner. He drove straight downtown, the morning traffic light on Woodward Avenue. The electronics store sat between a barber shop and a closed dry cleaner, its bright window posters promising savings and cutting-edge home tech. The bell above the glass door jingled as he stepped inside. Rows of gadgets lined the shelves, everything from wireless doorbells to smart light bulbs. But Walter headed straight to the section labeled Home Security. A young man with a techie name tag and thick glasses looked up from the counter. Morning, sir. Looking for anything specific today? Walter nodded. Hidden cameras. I need something discreet. Good quality. The clerk lit up, walking him toward a wall of display boxes. You're in luck. We've got some great models in stock. Night vision, motion activation, smartphone alerts, pretty much what you see in spy movies. Walter studied the packaging, his fingers moving carefully across the features listed. He pointed to a compact black camera about the size of a car key. This one here. What's the battery life? 12 hours on full charge, and it records in 1080p, even in total darkness. The motion sensor can be adjusted too, so it won't pick up minor shadows, but it'll catch a real person no problem. Walter nodded. I'll take it. The drive home was quiet. The box sat on the passenger seat like a small, silent promise. Walter's jaw tightened every time he thought of Derek's smug grin or Emily's soft, maybe you forgot. He hadn't forgotten. He had been dismissed. Back home, the house was empty. Emily had already left for her supermarket shift, and Derek's truck was gone. Perfect. Walter laid the camera parts out on the kitchen table, reviewed the instructions, and began setting it up with the care of someone used to precision. He downloaded the app, synced the device, tested the angle from his nightstand to his dresser. Then, carefully, he chose the hiding spot, behind a family photo of Emily and her mother, taken on her wedding day. A painful memory now, but it served a purpose. From there, the camera had a perfect view of the wallet and water glass. Walter poured a fresh glass of water and placed it exactly where it always went, right next to the wallet. Then, he opened the wallet, took out exactly $300, and arranged the bills so they would be clearly visible under the lamplight. Not too obvious, but not hidden either. Just tempting enough for someone who thought he had gotten away with it before. The test recordings worked flawlessly. The image, even in black and white, was crisp. Walter walked past the bed, triggering the motion sensor. His phone buzzed immediately. He exhaled slowly. The trap was set. That night, he went to bed early. The lights were off by 10, though he didn't close his eyes. Every creak, every rustle, made his breath slow and deliberate, pretending to sleep while his heart kept a silent drumbeat of anticipation. The clock read 2:47 a.m. when the alert buzzed on his phone. He waited a minute, maybe two, then sat up and reached for it. One new recording. Time-stamped perfectly. He opened the video. At first, the room appeared still. Then, the door creaked open. A shadow entered the frame. Walter's breath caught. The infrared lens captured the figure with eerie clarity. Derek, moving like a man who had done this before. No hesitation, no fumbling. Derek crossed the room silently, went straight to the wallet, opened it, slid the bills out, counted them. Quick, practiced movements. And then, he picked up the water glass, and he spit into it. Walter's grip tightened around the phone. Not accidentally, not mindlessly. Derek looked directly at the glass, sneered, and then walked out of frame. Walter played the video again, then again. The theft was methodical, but the spit, that was personal. That wasn't desperation. That was disrespect. That was contempt. How many times had he unknowingly drunk from that glass after Derek had? He stood up slowly, set the phone down, and walked to the bathroom. He rinsed his mouth, his teeth, his tongue, his throat. Then he did it again. He didn't say a word. The next morning, Walter didn't mention the recording. He greeted Emily with a soft, "Good morning," kissed her cheek, and sipped coffee from a different cup. Across the table, Derek yawned loudly, playing the part of the tired provider. Walter studied him for a long moment. Then he stood, excused himself, and walked back upstairs. There was no anger in his eyes. Only calculation. Later that day, he called Frank Reynolds, an old colleague from the plant. Frank picked up on the second ring. "Walter? Long time. Everything okay?" "I need some advice." "Sure, what's going on?" "I have a video," Walter said evenly. "It shows Derek, taking my money, spitting in my water." The silence on the line was long and heavy. "Are you sure it's him?" "Clear as day." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," Walter said. "Emily still believes in him. She thinks he's trying." "You can't let this slide." "I won't." Walter hung up and sat on the edge of the bed. The phone rested in his palm. The video now lived in two places, his phone and a cloud backup. He had proof. Undeniable, time-stamped, high-resolution truth. But justice, he knew, wasn't just about being right. It was about the moment you chose to act and how. And Walter Jenkins intended to get it right. Walter Jenkins had built 100 systems in his lifetime. Brake valves, pressure regulators, test benches for automotive diagnostics. But this one, in a strange way, felt just as important. It was smaller, quieter, and more personal. And this time, the blueprint wasn't for a machine. It was for a lesson. He waited 3 days. 3 mornings in a row, the cash in his wallet disappeared in calculated intervals. $200 on Tuesday, $100 on Thursday. Each time, Derek acted normal, polite even, tired from long hours, grateful for dinner, quick to clean his plate, slower to meet Walter's eyes. Walter didn't say a word. He didn't need to. On Friday afternoon, while Emily was at work and Derek was supposedly picking up an extra shift, Walter got into his car and headed back downtown. Not to Tech World this time, but further up Woodward Avenue, past the park and toward a storefront he hadn't visited in years. Its neon sign blinked Prankster's Paradise, half buzzing, half flickering, like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive. Inside, the shop felt like a cross between a costume warehouse and a magician's closet. Rubber snakes hung from the ceiling. Joke books and fake mustaches lined the walls. The young clerk at the counter had purple hair, 3 nose rings, and a look of mild curiosity. "Looking for a prank gift?" she asked. "Something that gives a shock," Walter said. "Mild, but memorable." She led him to a display case. Inside were pens, gum packs, lighters, all rigged to deliver small jolts of electricity. Walter's eyes settled on a wallet. It looked ordinary. Real leather, worn edges, sturdy stitching, a familiar feel. "This one," he said, pointing. "Shocking wallet," the clerk said cheerfully. 9 volts. Nothing harmful. Just enough to surprise someone who thinks they're being sneaky. He tested it on his own palm. The jolt made his fingers twitch. "Perfect," he said, almost smiling. "And for realism." She led him to another shelf stacked with movie prop currency. "We sell it to film students all the time. Looks great on camera. Almost impossible to tell unless you're really examining it." Walter flipped through the fake hundreds. The texture was nearly perfect. The print was sharp. He weighed the stack in his hand, nodding once. "How much for $300 worth?" he asked. $50, all in." He paid in cash and left the store with a paper bag that felt heavier than it should have. On the drive home, he played out the setup in his head. The positioning, the angle, the timing. Every step needed to be precise, not because he wanted Derek hurt, but because he wanted the moment to speak for itself. That evening, Emily made beef stew, the house filled with the warm smell of bay leaf and onion. Walter sat at the dinner table, stirring slowly, barely touching his bowl. Derek arrived late. He looked irritated, distracted, tossed his keys on the counter, mumbled something about traffic. Emily kissed his cheek, tried to smile through the tension that hung like fog. "You've been working in the garage a lot lately," she said to Walter, attempting small talk. "New project?" "Organizing old tools," Walter replied evenly. "It's amazing what you find when you really look at things closely." Derek's fork paused midair. "Speaking of looking at things," Walter continued, reaching for the butter, "I've been reading about home security. Cameras these days are something else. You can monitor your whole house from a phone, even in the dark." Emily blinked. "Are you worried about break-ins?" "Not exactly," Walter said. "More like internal theft. Seems some people think other folks' wallets are public property." Derek set down his fork with a hard clink. "There you go again," he snapped. "Paranoia. Maybe you should consider writing things down if you keep forgetting." "Paranoia," Walter repeated, nodding. "Interesting word, especially from someone with such expensive taste in jewelry." Emily's head turned sharply. "Can we please just have a peaceful dinner?" she said. "I'm tired," Derek added, "of being accused without proof, from a cheap old man who counts every penny like it's his last." The silence that followed stretched and cracked. Walter leaned back, folding his napkin carefully. "Cheap old man," he echoed. "That's one way to describe me. Another might be landlord, or perhaps benefactor." "Walter," Derek started. "No, please," Walter interrupted gently. "Tell me more about how I manage money. I'd love to hear it." Emily looked from one man to the other, unsure whose eyes to meet. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Walter stood. "If you'll excuse me, I think I'll turn in early." He climbed the stairs slowly, heart steady. In his bedroom, he retrieved the paper bag from his closet and began the final steps. He emptied his real wallet, replaced it with the shocking one. Loaded the fake bills in loose, natural folds, just enough to tempt. Set it on the nightstand. Filled the water glass beside it. Then he turned off the light and waited. The red glow of the bedside clock marked time with quiet authority. Midnight, 1 o'clock, 1:45. The house settled into stillness. Floorboards stopped creaking. Pipes fell silent. Outside, the wind rustled the leafless maple trees. At 1:57 a.m., Walter heard the softest creak in the hallway. A step, another. The door opened with the barest whisper. He kept his breathing deep and even. Eyes closed, arms relaxed. He heard the familiar shuffle, the careful angle of approach, the wallet lifted. And then, what the... The voice cracked into the silence, followed by the clatter of footsteps and a muffled curse. Walter waited 3 seconds, then flicked on the lamp. Derek stood there, face pale, hand shaking, staring at the wallet on the floor. Bills, fake bills, scattered like dry leaves. Walter sat up slowly. "Derek," he said with soft astonishment, "what on earth are you doing in my room at 2 a.m? Derek's mouth opened, but no words came. Walter reached calmly for his phone on the nightstand. "I'd suggest sitting down," he said. "There's something you need to see." The bedroom lights bathed everything in warm yellow. Walter Jenkins sat upright, his pajama shirt neat, his voice calm, far too calm for 2 a.m. Derek Palmer stood like a man caught in the middle of a crime scene, which in fact he was. His hand still twitched from the jolt, his face pale, lips parted in the beginning of an excuse that never came. Around his feet, fake bills lay scattered like feathers after a pillow fight, their crisp corners catching the lamplight. I was just getting a glass of water," Derek finally said, voice dry and uncertain. Walter tilted his head slightly. "From my nightstand? I thought—" Derek's eyes darted to the water glass. "I was checking to make sure you were okay." Walter raised an eyebrow. "At 2 a.m, with your hand in my wallet." Derek straightened, anger rising to cover fear. "You're making assumptions. That wallet shocked me. This whole thing is insane." Walter reached over to the nightstand and picked up his phone. With a few slow taps, he opened the Secure View app. "Let's not argue about perception. Let's look at proof." "No," Derek snapped, stepping forward. "That's private." But Walter had already turned the screen toward him. The black and white footage began silently. The door opening, Derek entering, his movements careful, practiced. He crossed to the nightstand, opened the wallet, counted the bills, and then the water glass. The moment Derek's spit hit the clear surface, Derek himself let out a noise, not from the phone, but from his throat. "That's not me," he said too quickly. "Look again," Walter said evenly. The face on the screen was unmistakable. The shirt, the haircut, even the watch on Derek's left wrist matched. "It's doctored. You must have edited this," Derek stammered. "I'm 70, Derek," Walter replied. "I barely know how to silence my notifications, but I do know how to back up data. This video lives in 3 places now." Derek looked at the phone like it might bite him. From the hallway came a sleepy voice. "Is everything okay up there?" Emily's. Both men turned toward the door as it creaked open. She stood there in her robe, rubbing her eyes, hair mussed from sleep. She looked first at Walter, then at Derek, then at the money on the floor. Her brow furrowed. "What's going on?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it. Walter simply extended the phone toward her. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "watch this." Emily stepped forward slowly, hesitantly. She took the phone and stared at the screen. Walter didn't say a word. The footage played again, Derek entering, taking the money, and then spitting. She gasped, the kind of gasp that only happens when something you've always believed crumbles in front of you. "Derek," she whispered. What is this?" "It's not what it looks like," he said quickly. "He's trying to turn you against me." "But that's you. That's our bedroom door. That's my dad's water glass. That's your shirt from yesterday. Walter's been manipulating this whole thing. He wants me out." "And you think faking a video is easier than asking you to leave?" she said, voice trembling. "You've been stealing from my father, and worse." "I work hard for this family," Derek said, voice rising. "You think those gifts paid for themselves?" Emily stared at him. "You bought me jewelry with stolen money?" Derek's shoulders sagged, and for a moment he looked smaller, not humbled, just caught. "How long?" she asked. Walter answered softly. 3 months, maybe longer. Emily's hand moved to the chain around her neck. She touched it like it burned. Derek took a step toward her. "You have to believe me." "I saw the video," she said. "I believed you. Every time. I defended you." Her voice cracked, and she stepped back. "You need to pack your things," she said quietly. "We're leaving tomorrow." Derek turned toward Walter, anger flaring again. "You'll regret this, old man." Walter stood. "Don't talk to me. Not tonight." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her father, unsure, ashamed. "Dad, I didn't know. I swear." Walter reached out, took her hand gently. "You trusted. That's not something to apologize for." Silence fell again, this time heavy with finality. Emily turned and walked out of the room, cradling the phone like a glass ornament that might shatter. Derek remained for a moment, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. Then he turned without a word and followed her. Walter sat down slowly, exhaled through his nose, and looked down at the scattered prop bills. He bent and picked one up. "Motion picture use only," it said in small print. Fitting, he thought, all performance, until the final act. The rest of the night passed in quiet. The house didn't sleep, but it rested. The next morning, the sounds of packing filled the hallways. Cardboard boxes thumped shut. Tape peeled. Drawers slid. Emily moved with grace and dignity, folding her clothes carefully, wiping her cheeks with her sleeve. Derek moved noisier, slamming doors, muttering under his breath, stomping down the stairs with each box like it owed him money. Walter stayed out of the way. Around noon, Emily appeared at the kitchen door. "Dad," she said softly, "I need to say something." He set down his coffee. "Go ahead." "I'm sorry I didn't see it. I should have, but I didn't want to believe." "You were trying to build something with him," Walter said gently. "You were hopeful. There's no shame in that." She looked at him, eyes red but clear. "Thank you. For not yelling. For not making it worse." "I did what I had to," he said, "to protect what matters." Derek's truck engine started in the driveway. Emily turned to go. "I'll call you once we're settled." Walter stood, walked her to the porch. She paused before getting in. "Living with lies would have been worse," she said. Then she hugged him. Not out of duty, not for show, but the kind of hug that says, "I understand now." Walter nodded once. "Drive safe." And just like that, they were gone, down Maple Street, under the April sun. The house behind him felt heavier and freer. Walter stepped back inside. The afternoon passed slowly, the kind of slow that made each second feel like it wanted to be noticed. Walter Jenkins stood in the front window, arms crossed gently over his chest, watching the truck disappear around the corner. Emily was sitting in the passenger seat. She did not look back, not once. He did not expect her to. That kind of pain was too raw, too close to the surface. The house felt hollow after they left, like it was holding its breath. The floor creaked less. The walls seemed wider. The silence wasn't empty. It was thoughtful, like the space itself was trying to process what had just happened. Walter made a cup of coffee. Only one. No big pot. No third mug set at the table. He sat in his recliner, the sun casting thin rectangles across the hardwood floor, and looked around. This was his home again. But it did not feel like a victory. He reached down beside his chair and picked up a leather-bound photo album. It had been tucked away on the side table for months. The front cover was soft from use, corners slightly bent. Inside were photographs from last December. Emily and Derek standing on the front porch, grinning as they held boxes. The first snowfall caught in their hair. Walter beside them, smiling because he had believed, fully and truly, that this new chapter was going to be something good. He flipped through the pages slowly. Emily decorating the tree. Derek hanging lights around the window frame. Dinner at the table. Fire crackling in the hearth. Laughter that echoed off every wall. Had it all been false? No, Walter thought. Not all of it. Some of it was hope. Some of it was love. And some of it, maybe more than he wanted to admit, had been wishful thinking, wrapped in comfort. He turned another page. There was Derek with the new tool set Walter had bought him for Christmas. There was Emily unwrapping a soft blue scarf Walter had picked out himself. There was all three of them, posed in front of the fireplace, wearing matching sweaters that Emily had insisted on buying. Walter stared at that photo for a long time. Matching sweaters, he thought. How many things do we wear for others just to keep peace? He closed the album slowly and rested it on his lap. The truth had been ugly, painful, but it had also been necessary, the kind of necessary that makes the air cleaner after a storm. He thought about Emily's hug, the way she had pressed her face into his shoulder and whispered that living with lies would have been worse. She was right. Truth, once it is known, cannot be undone. It might hurt. It might shake foundations. But it also clears the path for something better. Eventually. Walter stood up and walked to the guest room that Emily and Derek had shared for 4 months. It was almost empty now. The dresser drawers were open, bare. The closet doors hung ajar. Only the faint smell of her shampoo lingered in the air. On the bed, folded neatly, sat a single towel and a small note. Walter picked it up. It was Emily's handwriting. Dad, I know this isn't how either of us wanted this to go. I'm sorry I couldn't see things sooner. I let love blind me, but I also know that if you hadn't done what you did, I might still be clinging to something that was never real. Thank you for protecting me, even when it hurt. I'll be back, just not right away. I need time. Love you always. Emily. He stood there for a long while, holding the note in both hands. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in the top drawer of the dresser. Not everything needed to be carried. Some things just needed to be kept. In the garage, the boxes Derek had promised to organize still sat untouched. Walter walked past them without comment, turned on the overhead light, and began to sort through his tools. Wrenches, wire cutters, old screws that had lost their threads. He placed each item back where it belonged. Slowly, methodically. No wasted motion. Later that evening, he returned to the kitchen and brewed a small pot of chamomile tea. He used Martha's favorite cup, the blue one with the faded roses near the rim, the one that had survived 3 decades, 2 relocations, and 1 accident with a particularly clumsy neighbor. He rinsed it carefully before pouring the tea. As the steam curled into the air, Walter sat back down at the table. He spread out his wall calendar from January and studied the marks he had made. Red X's, notes in the margins. Days he had chosen to remember. Each one was part of a story now closed. He took a blue pen and wrote across the bottom margin, April 14th. Emily left. The truth stayed. Then he tore out the month and folded it in half. When he opened the window, the cool evening breeze drifted in gently. The smell of spring was faint but growing stronger. The maple tree outside had the first buds of new leaves. A new season was coming. Walter stood at the threshold, tea in hand, and looked out over the yard. No voices arguing in the hallway, no missing cash, no shame bottled beneath politeness. Just stillness, just truth. And for the first time in months, Walter Jenkins let his shoulders rest. He had protected his home, not with anger or fists or threats, but with patience and quiet resolve. He had used what he knew: observation, logic, design, and love. Not the kind of love that covers up wrongdoing, but the kind that shines light on it, so it can no longer fester. He had packed away the lies. And now, slowly, he would begin unpacking the piece. 2 weeks had passed since the truck pulled away from the house on Maple Street. The days moved forward like slow ripples across a still lake, unhurried, steady, and quiet. Walter Jenkins settled back into a routine that had once been familiar. Morning coffee at 6:30, short walks to the mailbox, grocery trips on Tuesdays, crossword puzzles completed in ink. There was comfort in the repetition, not because it was exciting, but because it was his. The house remained silent, but not empty. It held memories again, only this time they were his alone. No more footsteps at odd hours, no more fake smiles across the dinner table, no more wondering where the missing dollars had gone. He no longer kept a camera hidden behind the photo frame. He had packed it away and locked it in a drawer. The engineer in him respected its precision. The father in him no longer needed it. One afternoon, he received a call from Emily. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice soft, but stronger than it had been before. "We found a place. Small apartment near the supermarket. Just temporary, but it's ours." Walter smiled into the phone. "That sounds like a good start." There was a pause. "I miss you." "I miss you too, sweetheart." They talked for a few more minutes. Nothing heavy, just updates, small moments. She told him about rearranging furniture, about cooking her own meals again, about the relief of silence. They did not mention Derek. Some silences were better left untouched. That weekend, Walter found himself in the garage again. He had dusted off the old workbench and organized every tool by size, then by function. The labels were still faded, handwritten years ago when Martha was still alive, and insisted on neatness, even in chaos. He smiled as he read them. Screwdrivers, bolts, random stuff that might be useful. He knew the victory he had won wasn't the kind people made movies about. No one gave him a medal. No one shook his hand or offered applause. But as he ran his fingers across the edge of the workbench, he felt a quiet pride. He had defended his home. He had stood up for the truth. He had shown his daughter, with patience and love, what dignity looked like in practice. Outside, spring was in full bloom. The tree in the front yard, bare just weeks ago, now held full leaves that rustled in the afternoon breeze. Tulips Martha had planted years ago pushed through the soil near the porch. Life kept moving forward, unbothered by the weight of human emotion. Walter watched a pair of neighborhood kids ride their bikes past the house, their laughter ringing out like wind chimes. Their innocence reminded him why truth mattered so much, why decency, though often quiet, was never weakness. That evening, he made himself a simple dinner: roasted chicken, green beans, and a slice of store-bought pie. He poured a small glass of iced tea and set the table for one. No fanfare, no ceremony, just contentment. After dinner, he walked into the living room, turned on the radio, and sat in his recliner. The news played in the background, but he wasn't really listening. His eyes were on the shelf above the fireplace, where a framed photo of him and Emily now stood alone. The other photos, the ones with Derek, had been gently removed, not out of anger, but to make space for what was real. Honesty, after all, deserved its own frame. The radio faded into soft music, a jazz tune, slow and steady. Walter closed his eyes, let the sound fill the space. It had taken time. It had taken loss. But the peace was back. And this time, it was built on truth. Not everyone would understand the kind of victory he had claimed. It did not roar. It did not shine. But it endured. And that was enough. Sometimes the quietest victories leave the deepest marks. And sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one expects. The ones who sit alone in quiet rooms, watching and waiting, until the moment comes to stand. Walter Jenkins never raised his voice. He never lashed out. But in his stillness, in his patience, he built something stronger than revenge. He built justice. Not the kind you find in courtrooms, but the kind you create with your own two hands, slowly, deliberately, with the resolve of someone who refuses to be disrespected in his own home. He was not a hero in the way movies define them. He did not fight with fists or rage. Instead, he used what life had taught him: discipline, observation, and a deep love for the people he cared about. He set the truth free, not to punish, but to protect. And in doing so, he reminded us all of something we often forget in a fast, noisy world. Never judge someone by how old they are, how quiet they seem, or how much they've lost. Because sometimes justice and clarity come from the very people we overlook. And sometimes those people are the only ones brave enough to see things through. The heart of this story is not about theft or betrayal, though both exist. It's about dignity, about protecting what's right without destroying what's left, about knowing when silence is strength and when it is time to speak. There is wisdom in restraint and power in calm. Walter did not let bitterness shape his actions. He let truth do the work. And perhaps that is the real lesson here. When life tests us, when someone crosses the lines we thought were sacred, it is possible to respond with grace, with strength, and with purpose. To stand firm without becoming cruel. To correct without humiliating. To lead without demanding. Because, like the gentle porch light left on for someone returning home, the quiet acts of courage we choose can light the way through life's darkest moments. And just as Walter protected his peace, so can we, whether it is our home, our heart, or our truth. So take a moment. Let this story settle with you. Think about the quiet people in your own life, the ones who sit, watch, and love deeply. The ones who seem fragile on the outside but carry the weight of years, wisdom, and deep resolve. And if this story touched you in some way, perhaps you'll pass it along. Not because it asks you to, but because someone out there might be needing a reminder that quiet strength is still strength, that calm is not weakness, and that dignity is always worth defending. Let that be the takeaway we carry with us, tonight and beyond.